Haven't seen our next guest in a while. He's been busy. Spring football and then, of course, hitting the road for a little recruiting. But good to have him back on the program again. Speaking of Kansas City, the second biggest Kansas City Chiefs fan of the market behind me is, of course, Utah defensive coordinator Morgan Scalley. How are you?
Riles, all this time you're saying you're building this guy up, long-time friend. I'm thinking you're talking about me. No. I'm like, okay, good job, Riles. Yeah, we are longtime friends. We have been at it for a minute, And it's this other guy that you're talking about. So I feel slighted, but that's okay. I'm good.
Don't feel slighted, Scalley. You and I are good friends. I've known you for almost all 18 years. Can you believe I've lived here 18 years now, by the way?
Time flies.
I know. I've known Scalley since he was just an all-conference defensive back, and now he's all grown up and defensive coordinator. But I've known my friend JB for 30 years. So
okay.
he and I went to college together. So it'd be like you knowing somebody since the days back at Highland High School.
Yes. Ever since I was a twerp back at Highland High.
So how's your spring been after football? We'll get into a little bit of spring football in a minute, but how's the spring gone for you overall?
Good. We obviously go straight from the spring game right into evaluation mode. So from April 15th to May 31st, coaches are on the road in their assigned areas, evaluating prospects for the 2020 class. It's a grinder. You're out there, you're visiting schools about, if you're on a good day, you're hitting 10, which is crazy, but usually about 7 to 8 schools a day, and talking with coaches and, getting transcripts and watching film. So this is a huge part of our year in terms of recruiting.
Would you call this kind of the get-to-know-you time or kind of solidifying maybe them coming in for camps this summer or almost kind of laying the groundwork for visits this fall?
Yeah, well, a lot of it has been done before you even hit the road, getting to know these kids over the phone. Obviously, the NCAA rules, have certain times where, you can call them. We can have one phone call during this period of time to them. You can text message them to give you a call, so that's not a big deal. But you're not allowed to meet with these prospects on their campus. You're just allowed to, if they're practicing, like in Houston, Texas, where my area is, they're on full-on practice mode right now. A lot of the schools are. They're padded up, and I can watch them practice and get after it a little bit. Where in the majority of states, they're if they're doing anything, they're doing them in shorts and shirts, and usually you're just looking at them in the weight room. So, right now it's just how are they doing in their classes? Are they, do they look the part, right? Coach may have them listed at 6'3", and then you go in there and he's not 6'3". Some coaches embellish, and so you're just trying to get a feel, from the coach's perspective. You may love a kid on film, but then you go talk to the coach. The coach is like, "This kid is a headache for me. Doesn't show up on time." So the character reference is a big part of it. There's a lot that goes into it. Bottom line, Riles, and a lot of the homework we've done before we go out there.
Morgan Scalley, Utah defensive coordinator, our guest here on the Bill Riley Show. I want to ask him. You've been you were the guy that headed up recruiting for a long period of time. Now it's changed. You guys have a whole recruiting staff, but you're still one of the point guys on this, and you've been a very good recruiter for a long time. I'd be curious in your mind how the recruiting game at Utah for you, Morgan, is different today than it was, let's say, when you first started hitting the road a decade or so ago, whenever that was as an assistant coach. How both the process has changed, but the perception of the school when you're going into Houston and San Antonio and in Texas and wherever you're going to recruit, the perception of the program's changed.
The reception of the program, that's just us being a Power 5 conference and, having some good things. The fact that we've had players, come from Florida, come from Texas, have success, go on to the NFL, that's a big part of it too, is establishing that relationship that we can take those young men and to develop them. So that's been a big part of it, I'd say. But our affiliation with the Pac-12 obviously is the number one thing in terms of, our perception to outside schools. So that's changed. The whole there's just so much about the recruiting process that has changed. Your ability to hide a kid, now with Huddle and some of these recruiting sites, you got film on every single kid that you want to film on. You're no longer having to have a coach send you a VHS tape in the mail. That's when I first started recruiting. So, technology's changed so much of it. The early signing period has been the most recent, effect on recruiting. And I think there's good and bad. I think it's definitely sped up the offer process for a lot of schools. The biggest deal, in my opinion, is you still have to get to know a kid, and you've got to get to know their personality, and you can't miss on character. Because then, if you're recruiting a freshman, you miss on character, you're dealing with that character for 4 years, and you can't be wrong. And so some of these offers that go out, they go out without even meeting the kid, and it's just crazy. Some of these offers are just based off of film or who else has offered the kid. But what can't be slighted is you getting to know their personality and their character, and will they be able to handle the grind of Utah football? Can they take hard coaching? Can they take, what our program is built on? And that, it's just toughness and no excuses mentality. So that's the biggest part of us. We can't lose that is knowing the kid.
A lot of programs don't do that, and I bring that up because it leads me to something I really wanted to ask you about. I'm sure you've seen the site Pick Six Previews, college football site. They put a stat out the other day in their research department. They looked at the recruiting classes from 13 to 16 or 13 to 15, and then they looked at the graduating classes of 17, 18, and then this year. And they evaluated where prospects were basically rated. We know that's not an exact science, but it's what we have. And
right.
then they translated that out to where they developed in schools that then put kids into the NFL. And they rated your program, yours and Kyle Whittingham's program, as number one in terms of player development, in taking kids from high school, developing them, and then putting them on. And I guess you were part of that, and because Kyle was there, and he wasn't the head coach, but he was part of the process, but you've been part of it since then. And I think you hit on a little bit there, Morgan, and the evaluation process is very, very key. But why do you think you guys have had such great success in maybe taking not the 4, the 5-star, the highly touted kids? You're getting a few more of those, and developing in those kids and bringing them through. Is it the evaluation process? Is there something you guys are doing that other schools aren't doing, do you think, in the 4 years that you have them there? Why do you think you guys have been so good at this?
I don't know. I don't know that we have a secret sauce to it. I honestly don't. I do know that we've had and continue to have very good evaluators of talent. You look at Jay Hill, and a lot of his guys went on to the NFL. Great evaluator. Connie, Aaron Roderick. You look at the guys here, and Jim Harding that's done a great job, Sharif Shah, Coach Whittingham. It's all about Coach Witt's process. The number one thing with Coach Witt is he's a stickler for the details. When you bring a guy to the table, you better know what other sports he likes. You better know about his family situation. You better know everything about the kid, or we're not watching the film. And that's a big deal to him. He's very upfront and honest with what he's looking for in recruiters. And if you're right 2 out of 3 times, you're doing a great job, because we're not always right. And everyone's eye for talent is different. So the other thing is when they get here, that doesn't change. The details, your influence in their life isn't going to change. You need to know who their roommates are, what their major is, everything about the kid. And the 3-pronged process is recruit, develop, and manage. And that manage part is a lot easier when you're recruiting the right kids. You know, a kid that, you know, on your downtime, you know, he's not going to be an issue with the law. He's not going to, you know, he's not going to be a list guy that's showing up late to mentor meetings and tutor meetings and all that stuff. So, you know, recruiting is the number one thing that we do, and it's the most time we put the most time into it. And then, you know, developing that talent, that's on us. Is to, if we're going to take a guy that we think is a developmental guy, it's our job to develop that talent, and then be able to manage and help them grow while they're here.
Yeah, you know, you hit on it, the evaluation process in recruiting. How important do you think that culture is in a program? Because you guys have a defined culture. Everybody knows it. Players know it when they're recruited. Players know it when they're in it, and they leave it. It seems like successful programs, Morgan, whether it's Utah, whether it's Alabama, whether it's Clemson, they have their identity, they have their culture, and it's almost as if the coaches don't have to police that culture. The kids that are in it do it while they're there. Is that fair?
That's fair. It's exactly, I mean, consistency, knowing what the scheme's going to be, knowing that your coaching staff's not going to change for the most part, that they're going to be there. They're going to be there for my kid. You know, the style of offense and defense that you play is a big part of it in terms of recruiting kids. But yeah, I mean, you hit on it. Culture is such a big deal, and it's built from the top down. And Kyle Whittingham, it's his culture. It's a tough mentality. It's a tough program to be a part of. And so when you're out there on the road recruiting, if you've got a guy that's out there at practice and you know, he's making a lot of excuses, that's just not a guy that we're real fired up about. Or a guy, when you say, hey, coach, you know, tell me about this kid's character, and he hesitates, right?
Yeah.
That's a big red flag for us. So again, we don't have the secret antidote. We don't. All I know is what has been, you know, taught to us by Kyle Whittingham, and we've been good with it. You know, the one thing I will tell you is we do not care, and you know, these recruiting sites are great. We do not care, nor do we look at what a kid is rated. The film has to speak to you, and if the film speaks to you, what they do in person has to speak to you. You know, anyone can put a great highlight film together. We watch game film. What do they do on the backside of a play? Who are they as a teammate? You know, so, you know, we've taken plenty of guys that, you know, for whatever reason didn't have a star ranking or whatever, and but we loved them. You know, Julian Blackmon's a perfect case of a guy that not a lot of offers, and he's one of many, but a kid in state that, you know, very, very few offers, but that when we saw him person compete and chip and coach, we love him, and he's been great for us.
Let's just a moment or two more here with Morgan. I wanted to ask you about two guys. I know you have to be thrilled for both Marquise Blair and Cody Barton. Again, Cody Barton was, you know, the other Barton brother when he went through the recruiting process. Jackson was the more highly touted recruit for whatever reason. But I look at a guy like Cody, and he kind of, to me, is the embodiment of what your program is. Came in, worked, never hesitated, never complained, never bitched or moaned, did what he was asked to do, and when it was his turn, he stepped up and took advantage. Marquise was kind of the same way, too, though he went the JUCO route, but, again, not highly touted, wasn't a guy that everybody and their brother was after, but you landed him, and he falls in that great line of safeties for you. So I had to guess you were thrilled on Friday when their names were called.
Very, very excited for both, and again, like you said, for different reasons. With Marquise, he's not a me guy. He's very. I'd say he's not the norm when you look at prospects nowadays, where everything is posted on social media. Look at my offers. Look at what I've been invited to. Look at me. He didn't do any of it. You know, you couldn't get a hold of the kid, and you know, you had to go to Dodge City to even talk to his coaches to see if he was there going to school. So, you know, he's a guy that he's not a me guy. I think he shut down his Twitter account, but he just loves the game and loves to compete. And, you know, it was so exciting to see people come through here and come through this office and be like, just, you know, not necessarily surprised by him, but where did you find this kid? And all these NFL scouts and GMs would come in. And, you know, that's what you do. Head down and you grind and you work. Good things happen, and they did for Marquise, and I'm so happy for him. And for Cody, you know, all he's done his entire career, both in high school and in college, is prove people wrong. And there were times where, you know, here at university, where we challenged him to become a more physical football player. You know, stuff that he would have to be doing in playing time. And we did very specifically, very upfront and honest with him. And the guy wouldn't whine. He wouldn't say, well, I think I'm physical. No, he'd say, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do it. And he put on more weight, and he got stronger, and he got faster. And and he was our most productive football player last year. And then he goes into, you know, a GM's meeting, and he gets up on the board, and because he's the smartest guy in the room, him and Chase, they get up on the board and they start drawing stuff up, and these guys are like, holy cow. That's what helped him the most in you know, in raising his draft stock was his meetings with these scouts and GMs, these position coaches. And so, you know, perfect example of trusting the process and not whining or complaining about your situation, but taking feedback and getting better every day. And, you know, you're a third-round draft pick in the NFL. Congratulations.
Yeah, I'd say so. Last thing for you. Coming out of spring football, now that you guys have done some evaluation, watched the practices, watched the tapes, what's the biggest question you've got heading into fall camp about your defense?
Biggest question would be depth at linebacker. Depth at linebacker, and
you're really three deep right now, correct?
Three deep where?
At linebacker.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're talking about, you got, you know, Devin Lloyd, who was healthy all spring. You got Francis, who did not participate in spring, and
right.
You've got Manny Bowen. We do like the progression of some of these younger backers. Andrew Mataafa showed some good things, but needs to put on weight. He knows that. Sione Lund is another guy that showed glimpses. So you know, we've got some guys in the program, and then we're also out on the road continuing to look for some added depth, whether that's a grad transfer, whether that's a late 2019 qualifier, or whatever it is. You know, that's, you know, a part of our deal out on right now is looking for those guys.
All right, here's my challenge to you. You're going to have a lot of guys next year that the NFL guys are going to be salivating over. We need to get Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo and Kyle Whittingham's son to get a Ute on that Chiefs defense next year. I think Jalen Johnson would look good on the outside playing lockdown corner next year in that Chiefs defense.
Hey, dude, he's a junior. Just relax.
I know.
Just relax.
You know what I'm saying.
I want Utes as Chiefs too, man. In fact, they liked Marquise. But the Seahawks
grabbed him. They grabbed
jumped
him
on
first,
that pretty
right?
Quick, yeah. But yeah, no, I'm with you. And having Alex over there, that's another good thing. Is you know, who do you like? But anyway, I'm all for Chiefs as Utes, and it was a sad day when Alex took off.
Yeah, I know, but we're okay at quarterback.
No question.
I think 15's going to be okay for us.
He's a pretty good player. Yeah.
Boy, how would you like to scheme against that guy, Morgan?
Oh, I wouldn't. Oh, my gosh. He is special. Whatever they pay him, he's worth it.
I talked to Weddle about playing against that guy. He's like, man, we thought we had a pretty good scheme against him, and he still made plays.
Yeah, he's legit.
Hey, thanks for coming on today. I'll see you real soon.
Appreciate it, Riles.
Thank you, Morgan. Morgan Scalley with